Hi, I'm Christy. I'm a registered psychotherapist and naturopathic doctor, and this is Conversations with Clients, where we chat about things that come up in session in hopes that they are helpful to you as well. Today's video wasn't inspired by any one particular client. It's more of a segment I am working on, which is strategies, practical tools for dealing with this human experience when it gets a little bit messy or difficult. And today's video is going to build on two other videos I did on a practice called RAIN, which I will link here. RAIN is a 4-step practice that is really about how to feel your feelings and attend to your feelings. RAIN is an acronym, R-A-I-N, and in today's video we're going to work on alternate endings, alternate ways that practice might finish if nurture isn't your jam. So I am going to assume in this video that you've already done your R, your A, and your I. You've already gone, aha, and now we're going to work on alternate ends. So alternate end number 1, non-identification. This is all about creating space between you and the experience you are having in that moment, recognizing it as an experience you are having in that moment and not as who you are. On one hand, that's not revolutionary. If I was to ask you, are you anger? Are you anxiety? Are you overwhelmed? You'd be like, no. Obviously not. And while that's true, it's often not how it feels in the moment with really intense experiences. When we have really intense experiences, we often sort of lose the space between who we are and the experience that's happening. It's like that space kind of collapses and we almost merge with that experience, which greatly increases the amount of distress associated with that experience when we are collapsed with it, when we're it and it's us and we're all merged in the mesh together. That really increases the intensity of it. And the way we think about things in English, the way we language things in English actually kind of adds to that problem, right? We say, I am angry. I am anxious, I am overwhelmed. We take it on as an identity. It's obviously not true. It's not true that you are anger or anxiety or overwhelmed any more than you are any of the other millions of experiences you've had in your lifetime. But when we language it that way, and then when we think about it that way, it sort of promotes that collapsing of us and our experience into one. And we can use language, though, to sort of deliberately disidentify from the experience, to sort of reclaim the space between us and the experience we are having in that moment. And we can do that with some pretty simple languaging shifts. Even saying, I'm noticing anger, or there is anxiety, or a part of me is overwhelmed. Languaging it that way can have a really big impact. It can really help us reclaim that space between us, the person that's noticing it, and the experience itself. And, shifting the language in that really small way could be so simple as to almost be insignificant, and yet language deeply, deeply affects how we relate to things. The research on this is a little bit mind-blowing. Language has been shown to influence everything from how we go about feeling our feelings or relating to our feelings, to how we go about our financial savings, how we relate to money. Speakers of languages that say, I have anger, anxiety, overwhelm, relate to their emotions differently than speakers of languages that say, I am angry, anxiety, overwhelmed. Speakers of languages that don't differentiate between past, present, and future save differently for the future than speakers of languages that do differentiate between past, present, and future. So there's a real power in language, and we can harness that power to help reclaim that space and sort of turn down the volume on the intensity of some of the emotions. So alternate ending number 1, non-identification. Play with changing your languaging. Play with saying, I'm noticing anger. There is anxiety. A part of me is overwhelmed. The last one's my favorite. I did a video on parts, and I will link that here. That might be a good one to watch. So alternate ending number 2, noting. Noting is a tool that helps us ride the wave of experience. So feelings are going through our body like a wave all the time. Emotional feelings, physical feelings, they are moving through our body like a wave all the time, 24/7. Most of the time we just don't notice it because we're riding the wave and we're okay. When the feeling though gets intense, when the wave gets bigger, it can just be a bit harder to keep our balance. And noting is a tool that can help us keep our balance, can help us ride the wave. Sometimes I use the example of like if you were kayaking or you're paddleboarding. The water is gentle, the waves are small. You're probably not paying close attention to the water. You're probably paying close attention to the scenery, to the experience, to the trees, to the birds, whatever, right? However, if the waves did get bigger, you're probably going to start paying close attention to the waves. You're probably going to be focused on the wave in order to try to help you like keep your balance while that big wave comes through. Same thing with a feeling, right? Whether it's a physical feeling, an emotional feeling, some combination, when the wave gets big, it can be really helpful to pay close attention to the wave. That's going to help us keep our balance through it as opposed to getting knocked over and towed along with it. And mental noting is just a tool to do that, to pay close attention to the wave and help us keep our balance. So noting is really about making a mental note, putting a mental note on the actual experience as it's happening, paying close attention to the wave and labeling each little element of the wave. The label is what's helping us keep our attention on the wave. You know, the same way if we were kayaking and there was a great big wave, you're not just going to be like, oh, big wave, and then go back to the birds because that big wave is going to come and take you with it. You're not just going to be like, oh, anger, and then go back to your day because that big wave is going to take you with it. You actually need to stay focused on the wave for however long it needs to move through the system. And noting helps us stay focused, stay closely paying attention to that wave. So if I'm noticing anger, that's the wave that's coming through our system. Mental noting might look like turning my attention towards that experience and noticing that wave. So it might be like anger, blame, tightness, heat, murderous rage, impulse to scream, anger, tightness, hunger, what's for lunch. You just kind of pay attention and mentally note each little part of that wave. And as you do that, you'll notice like there's a beginning and a middle and an end. It's kind of wild to watch the mind go from murderous rage to what's for lunch, or that song lyric I can't get out of my head, or what I have to do for the rest of the day. But that is how it works. Our system is going through those waves all the time. And if we can just surf them, we can keep our balance. So alternate N number 2, noting, play with tracking the wave, paying really close attention to the wave, and using noting to keep you focused on the wave and see if that helps you keep your balance. And finally, alternate ending number 3, no wonder. I love this one. It's one of my favorites. No wonder is all about remembering that what is happening is natural. It's normal. It's expected. Nature does nothing in vain. If this is happening, it's happening for a reason. And no wonder is all about remembering that. It's remembering that this is happening for a reason. An experience might be unpleasant, it might be distressing or upsetting, but it's not wrong. So often we sort of wrong our experience. You know, we say, this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be feeling this way. We sort of like go to war with it. But the experience is not wrong. It's the natural, normal, expected result of the circumstances, the external circumstances, the internal circumstances. It's happening for a reason. And when we say, no wonder, we're sort of like stepping into that attitude. It's a way of cultivating the attitude that this is happening for a reason. So when we say, no wonder there's anxiety, no wonder I'm noticing anger, no wonder a part of me is overwhelmed, we are implicitly like stepping into that attitude that it's happening for a reason. And what's kind of wild is that when you do that, when you say, no wonder, the reasons why it's no wonder actually start to come up. It's like it shines a light on all the reasons why this is happening. And even if you don't believe it, even if you started that sentence like, no wonder a part of me is overwhelmed, without really knowing why the reasons were, or maybe even thinking there were actually reasons. By the time you finish that sentence, it's wild. It's like all the reasons why no wonder this is happening start to surface and start to come up. And a lot of insight and understanding can actually be gained that way. So, alternate ending number 3, no wonder. Play with when experiences come up. See what happens when you say, no wonder. No wonder there's anxiety. No wonder I'm overwhelmed. Whatever it is. Play with saying no wonder and see what comes up. So those are 3 alternate endings to the practice of RAIN. I would be remiss without at least mentioning the OG, nurture. Nurture is all about care, ultimately compassion, as Dan Harris from 10% Happier likes to say, it's just about giving a shit. And ultimately, the natural, normal response to distress or suffering is to care. That's what nurture is about. It's just about caring that there's suffering, that there's distress going on. And that is the natural response. And when I say natural, I mean it is our genetic inheritance. We are genetically wired to care about suffering and distress. If there's suffering and distress out there, we are wired to care. If the suffering and distress is in here, we are wired to care. And so working on that capacity to care is really just about working on our natural genetic predispositions. Sometimes despite that predisposition, the wiring's got a little wonky. And so working on that capacity to care is really about reconnecting to our humanity, to our natural inclinations. I did 2 videos on self-compassion. One is on the neurology of self-compassion, and the second is on practical practices for building that up and working on that. I will link those here. Those might be worth checking out if you haven't seen them. I hope this was helpful. I hope it gives you some other options and ways of maybe working with the feelings. If you have questions, if anything's come up, I may have answers. Who knows? I will certainly try. Put them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Take care.